Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantling family court corruption. I have another announcement. Please notify your Attorney General in your state regarding solar panels made by Sonova and Generac Systems. If you are having difficulty with this company, please fill out the complaint form in your state. Now, I have a return guest. I'm happy to have Kenneth Gottfried back on. He was last on season 2, episodes 122 and 148, season 3, episode 98, and season 4, episode 5. And today we're going to talk about his new book, Child Psychological Abuse: The Essential Guide to Stopping Parental Alienation in Its Tracks, a step-by-step strategy for parents and lawyers to end child psychological abuse and fight back against the family court corruption. And I welcome you back, Ken Gottfried. How long did it take you
Hello,
to write this
Marianne.
book? Hey.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the warm introduction.
Glad to have you back.
You
You know,
bet.
it's difficult to write a book. Everyone says, well, how long did it take to write your book? This and that.
It only took me 9 years, so I highly recommend that you take 9 years out of your life to write one book. Of
If
course, now I have like 10 books, so
Mhm.
yep.
So we were talking earlier about dissecting the word alienation.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And it's in my book, Stopping Parental Alienation in Its Tracks,
Right.
is that the very first thing you have to do is stop using the word parental alienation. It is a euphemism. You don't
Hmm.
go up to somebody or to a sheriff and be like, they have a really, really close relationship as opposed to sexual abuse. You don't say that. You don't use the word parental alienation at all. You term
Right.
it for what it actually is, which is psychological child abuse. It's in the DSM-5 under V995.51. It is
Right.
under that is under two other things under that, which is a shared persecutory delusion, and it is under a false factitious belief imposed upon another. So, for everybody who doesn't get that, your child who you believe and suspect is being abused to hate and fear you, that is the imposed belief on another, on your child. So now that's why they're going to be in fear and hate you. That is the actual definition for imposing a false belief on another child. And so you have to be really careful, and you have to get the right people who are going to investigate it. Someone who is specialized in child psychological abuse.
And you were mentioning earlier when we were talking before we recorded about the dark triad of
Ooh.
these people that do this to these kids, that these
See,
people are not well.
the thing is that we all get married to whoever or wind up with whoever, have kids, and unfortunately, you don't usually see that dark triad. You ignore those flags because you want to make things work out around the kids, have them grow up happy and healthy. With a dark triad person who brings you into family court, who makes it all of a pain in the ass for you to see your kids and raise them properly, and are trying to destroy your relationship with those children, that is a very, very dark personality. You can see that they most likely have narcissistic borderline personality disorder because as a child, as they grew, they had to be, they saw everything in black and white.
Hmm.
You can't look at, they can't look at a person without saying they're a good person, they're a bad person. There's no, oh, they're all right. They're on my acquaintance list. They're on that, they're not quite the closest friend and they're not quite the hard enemy that you would think. But they only have those two jurisdictions right there.
Hmm.
They don't have any of the gray, any of the, well, I kind of like them, but I keep them at a distance. They
Hmm.
don't have that. They have, I hate you, or I love you, or I like you. That's it.
Hmm.
And so they impose that on their children. So the moment that you're trying to leave, or the moment that a parent is trying to leave, that person is looked at as completely evil. Okay. Even
Mhm.
if they had kids with them, that person is completely evil. Even if they try, and they do just about everything to harm that person, and they destroy their relationship with their kids, because that's a great way to get back at somebody and destroying their heartstrings. After
Mhm.
all, most of us grew up, we had a rough childhood. We had these things going on. All I want to do is make it better for my kids. And that's usually in all of our parenting abilities. All I want to do is give it one level up to be better than the childhood that I had.
Right.
And by doing that, they know that is the most important thing that you have in your heart. Your children are in your heart. So if
Mhm.
that dark triad, narcissistic borderline, serious attachment disorder can destroy that in you, they know that they are destroying your identity, your ability to parent, and that child now despises you,
Mhm.
hates you, and fears you.
And the strange part of all of this can happen within a week.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Oh.
people don't understand is that if you make a child uncomfortable by withdrawing your love, withdrawing their favorite foods, paying them no attention, it happens unbelievably quickly to um, make a child so uncomfortable. If you look, God, I forget what that name of the doctor. I think it was Tronick, Ed Tronick. He did the studies on the plain face model. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think
Where he
so.
took toddlers and he had the mother sit in front of the toddler and
Mhm.
did not react, gave him a plain face.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he diagnosed the toddler and the child so being so uncomfortable that they were looking away trying to get a reaction, but there was no react, still face experiment, sorry, that's what it is. And
Mhm.
they did this and saw how horrible that was for the child. That's what these dark triad people do to their kids. They make them feel so uncomfortable until they start saying, like, well, dad was late. Oh my God, dad was late? Oh, mom, wasn't at the show tonight, even though she had work. Oh, she wasn't at the show. She never cared about you. She never loved you. That's the still face experiment will give only so far for that child
Mhm.
before they actually start crying. In a
Mhm.
toddler, crying. In a younger adult, they are just so uncomfortable they have to get out of that situation.
Mhm. That's so heartbreaking.
Yep. And that's how they manipulate everybody. That's how they manipulated us. Let's
Mhm.
face it, there was only times that they would show affection, only times that they would rub our back, or they would go out for a walk with us, or they would whatever, because they didn't want to.
Mhm.
They weren't happy, so it was your fault.
Mhm.
And that's how they react. It's a shame. It's cruel, and it's especially cruel to the kids because you're manipulating that child into a pathology. You are creating a delusion within that child. You are imposing a false belief within that child. That's why that child hates you. That's why that child is uncomfortable when they see you. Not only that, but they're trapped because now they have a huge loyalty conflict to one parent. They also are doing horrible shit to another parent,
No, it's
horrible
okay.
stuff to another parent. And, in order to justify it, they have to be right. They
Mhm.
have to be, if they're not right, there's major, major issues.
Now
You
that's
know,
called splitting, right?
it's
When they
splitting. Yes, and it's funny because splitting is literally almost the same definition for borderline. Because at this point, you have an adult person who's got borderline who only likes one group of people and hates another group. There's
Mhm.
no indifference. There's no having, dad's all right, but I just kind of stay. It's not like that. I fear my dad. I hate my dad. fear my mom, I hate my mom, whatever it is horrible. It is a delusion imposed on another person. It's a pathology. And I
Well,
get
well, when I was a nurse and I was working on the psychiatric unit, I asked one of the seasoned nurses, "What is borderline personality disorder?" And she said, "Well, the patient will like you today, but they might not like you in the afternoon. They might like
yep,
you all day today, but they might hate you tomorrow." Right?
yep.
So I learned that pretty quick, and it's very true. It's like a light switch on and off.
Exactly, exactly. And and if they decide that they hate you, there's literally almost no way to come back. And so it is, oh, you know, when they're not trying, that borderline is not trying to push you away for a week, unless they're just trying to manipulate you
Hmm.
for that week to do your bidding or do their bidding and stuff like that. These people are literally trying to destroy you or have you unalive yourself.
Hmm.
Because if they can get you to unalive yourself, then oh my goodness, look, they had tons of mental issues and blah 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 blah. And that's, it's sick.
Hmm.
Absolutely sick
Oh,
to
yes.
actually want to do that to somebody who is the father or mother of your child.
Right. And other people get involved in this, as you know, as well. Whoever your ex marries can start this ball rolling as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a huge fear. That's a lot of people do that.
So I
It's
think when you get divorced, you should sign some post co-parenting plan where if either of you marry, they do not come, whoever you marry does not come in between the relationships of the other parent and the child.
absolutely.
Something has to be put in place like this and followed.
I know, but it's we can't
I
even
know.
get we can't even get anyone to walk into a sheriff's office and say, I'd like to file child psychological abuse, and them to actually take that seriously and write a report.
Hmm.
You can't go into any child protection agency, whether it's DHHS or CPS or whatever, and say, my child is being abused psychologically. I need you to do an assessment of my child.
Hmm.
They won't do it because they realize that is the number one cash cow that gets them $77 billion a year into all the states from the federal government and Title IV D&E, which is a grant they never have to pay back. That's one of the biggest reasons that we're having this problem is because there's so much money that goes into the hands of GALs, police departments, sheriff's departments, attorney generals, politicians, retirement accounts of all the judges. You can't get these people to budge because
Right.
they know where their bread is being buttered, and they're all so willing to overlook this. I mean, we can look at Kayden's law.
Hmm.
You have Kayden's law? Dr. Childress just did a beautiful rip apart of what Kayden's law is.
Uh-huh.
And that if you are in family court, you can absolutely get someone to look at sexual abuse. You can absolutely get somebody to look at physical abuse. You cannot get anyone, and it basically hog ties the judge through legislature that you cannot accuse somebody of psychologically abusing the kids. They literally deleted the DSM V995.51, deleted out of the DSM psychological child abuse. You cannot
Hmm.
use it. Even though it's child abuse, it's diagnosed as child abuse, it states it's child abuse, and has assessments on how to diagnose it. You are not allowed to get anybody to say this is child abuse.
That is just so sad because in that case, there was custodial interference. And of course, law enforcement doesn't know what custodial interference is, even though there have been laws on the books for well over 40 years. They just weren't trained about this as cadets in the police academy. They don't know how to handle it. Essentially, it's not their fault, but they have to be trained on how to handle these issues. When a parent comes to them, as I did so many times to the state police saying, I went to the house to pick up the kids, the lights are on, nobody's home. Well, okay, they made a phone call. Okay, we called the DA. They're saying, it's a family court matter. You'll just
Yeah,
have to
it's
take it
not.
up
It's
and
not.
yeah.
It's not a family court matter.
No,
It's a criminal matter.
it's a
Now,
criminal felony.
just just to let you know, okay? I am working with some attorneys with your phone.
Hmm.
So when you make a call like that, you will have an attorney on the phone.
Hmm.
Okay. I am working with attorneys all across the United States to get a group together to where you can have an attorney at that moment's notice when you have one of the letters. Sorry. In my book, Stopping Parental Alienation in its Track, there are tons of letters that you can write to the sheriff's department, to the judges that are in family court, and explain that my child is being abused. This is how they're being abused, and you can manipulate that letter any way you want to do it and give that to the judge, give
Hmm.
that to the sheriff's department, give it to the police department, and it also includes the emotional abuse of domestic violence, according to the Department of Justice. Just to let you know, the Department of Justice, their definition of emotional domestic violence is harming one's relationship with his or her children.
Mm,
So,
okay.
yeah, so you can file domestic violence. And this is what I'm trying to do with the phones, and you have an attorney on that line, it's being recorded on that line. That is a slam dunk for any other attorney that, what do you mean you didn't press charges or write a report for domestic violence? That's illegal in our state. By the way, it's illegal in all 50 states that someone in an authority position like a sheriff, deputy, police department refuses to write child abuse or domestic violence reports and then hand them off to who does the assessment investigation. It's illegal.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to get these attorneys to witness it and record it. Mention that if they don't do this according to the mandatory state statute, then they will be sued. Their department will be sued. They will lose all their qualified immunity, and we will go after them into their pocketbooks.
Mhm.
That is, by doing that and refusing to do that, that is a lawsuit waiting to happen. And it is
Mhm.
a slam dunk because you have the video. All you have to say is, when is it, what is the docket number? And I want to come copy and pick it up. Or I want a copy of it for me and pick it up.
Mhm. Should
If
these letters also be notarized, perhaps, as an affidavit?
get it notarized if you want, and then you can also send in a copy and mail it in
Yeah, you keep
and
the
say,
original.
well, you want to get the documentation. If you mail it in, it's going to whoever, and
Right.
they will circular file it the way they want to see fit. If you are in there in person and you say, here, this is what's happening and what I believe is suspected with my child, I need the report so I can give it to me and my attorney. And just to let you know, if you do not file this report, which is state mandated, we are coming after you personally
Mhm.
and we are wiping away your judicial immunity.
Mhm.
I also want to file domestic violence for emotional violence, for harming my relationship with my children. But I'm also going to come after you for domestic violence because you're not writing child abuse reports.
Now, just
Because if they don't do it, they're also in violation of emotional domestic violence because they are not writing their mandatory reported.
mhm. In their minds, they're just thinking, well, there's no bruises on this kid, so there's no problem. That's what they're thinking. They're not looking at what's going on mentally to these kids.
Oh, totally, totally. Um, that's part of it. But the police and the sheriff's department, they try and be, oh, we're in control. We know so much. We da 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 da. And they go into this diatribe of, listen, I've seen this before.
Hmm.
It has to be in family court, not here. They give every excuse on the book not to write the report. That's why I'm saying we need to have the lawyers, some lawyers that will sue that county, that sheriff's department or that police department for not writing reports
Hmm.
because they want to try and be in control. That's their whole
Yeah.
premises. We want to control the narrative wherever we're sitting. Well, what the simple questions for that is, okay, well, tell me what a emotional cutoff is. How did you diagnose my child? And they'll be like, they'll stutter. Okay, well, a child enmeshed with a parent. What did you do to diagnose that? What's enmeshment? That's
Uh-huh.
why you need to write these reports. If you don't know what enmeshment is, you don't know what splitting is, you don't know where the depression and anxiety come from, you don't know is that they still will stand on their heels and be like, no, I'm not going to do a thing. And that's why we have to have, and I'm trying to get this together, where anybody across the United States can have their cell phone, hold it up, video record that officer, that sheriff's department deputy refusing to write the reports, and then just
Mhm.
go after them. You can't go after them for time with your kids. You can't
Right.
go after them with the civil court, with the judge ordering child abuse. You cannot do that. But
Mhm.
you can go after them for refusing to write mandatory statutes and do their job. And you have it on video, and it should be a slam dunk for any civil rights attorney.
Right. And Kayden's law should be rewritten. It's got to include this child psychological abuse. And I can't remember if it said anything about the custodial interference issue.
I don't think it's in there because they let me tell you right now with Caden's Law, it was written so beautifully from a dark triad individual that they eliminated and tried to eliminate almost any possibility for anybody to protect their child with psychological abuse.
Mhm.
They wrote it so derogatory. They've convinced all these politicians and all these people who have voted for it and put it in their states that this is the way to go, protecting parents from their child being psychologically abused and harmed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is it's horrible. I mean,
Right.
what do you do? How do you argue with a person who believes it's okay to abuse children in this particular way?
Mhm.
How do you argue with a person that says we encourage uh um psych goodness, I'm missing my words. Um
Child psychological abuse.
yeah, how can you encourage psychological abuse that gives a child, your child, a pathology? How do you do that and say this is okay? This is the way we wrote this law. And then go to your politicians. Oh, yeah, we want to sign this. How do you do that as a human being? So, whoever wrote this law, it boggles my mind and is absolutely keen on continually abusing children. I wrote this law so we can abuse them psychologically, leave no physical scars, but we're going to go ahead and destroy this children. As long as we can destroy that child's relationship with a loving parent. Because let's face it, if a child turns a parent down, oh, well, that parent must have done something wrong.
Hmm.
No. Yeah, let me tell you, if a child turns a parent and cut has an emotional cutoff of that parent, that child is probably being abused. either by that parent that they've cut off and is like, I'm no longer going to get hit by you, or by a parent who is like abusing them and has imposed this belief that they need to be feared, they need to be avoided, and they need to be scared of, and hated too. Yeah, that's
It's very sad uh, when it can happen. It's so insidious as well, this child psychological abuse.
yeah. Oh, without a
You
doubt.
don't see it coming. A parent doesn't realize it because you're naive to it. You don't know what is happening until it's full blown. Let me
I
tell you.
know, I know. You're looking at this and you're like, why? I can see there's something wrong in my child's eyes, but I don't know what it is because that's the way most parents are. And most parents who are loving and kind and want to just play with their kids and educate them, you don't expect to get stabbed in the back.
No.
You're like, okay, we're going to go through this divorce. Okay, let's just try and ride through this. Okay. This is one of the situations I want to talk about. Andrea Capua. She is the Watauga County uh, attorney. She told me for a fact that anybody who believes their child, now she represents Len Hageman as a sheriff in Watauga County,
Mhm.
Tom Hughes, Chad Slagle. Tom Hughes is the director of the DHHS, the CPS in North Carolina, and the town manager, I don't remember what his name is, Gregory Gerard, whatever.
Mhm.
All have said we have absolute, oh, including Valerie Johnson. I believe that's her name. She's the director of DHHS in North Carolina for policies and whatever. They have all stated on the books with emails, we have absolutely no procedure for psychological abuse, will not investigate it, will not care about it. And as far as your kids can go, they can go and get damaged all they want, especially if it's psychological abuse. And the only way that you are going to be able to protect your kids is to um, take matters into your own hands. And I was like, what are you saying?
Mhm.
You're saying that the only way I can protect my kids is not by going to the sheriff and deputies, not by going to the police department, not by going to DHHS,
Who
not
should
by
be doing
going
their
to
job.
exactly. Oh, and Josh Stein as well. He became the governor. He was the attorney general. Him and his department also said the only way to protect your kids or some type of group, because the only way to stop this evil is to
Mhm.
have a procedure. The only way to stop this is to have an attorney who will go after these people, these tyrants, for not writing reports of child abuse and domestic violence. If you can find an attorney to go in and go after these organizations and government and sue them for not doing their jobs. And
Would
that's
you
very, very hard to do and find.
you would think a criminal attorney might want that, maybe.
Civil rights attorney
Well,
and a
they
criminal
don't want to
attorney.
work. I've talked to civil rights attorneys, even when I was trying to run my federal case. Nobody wants to help you.
Yeah, I know. And that's what, see, that's the whole thing is you go up as far as you can go in your federal court, and you know what, they're just like the judicial standards commissions in all the states. They're there to protect the status quo and their judges.
Mm.
Okay, so doesn't matter that you have proof. I had proof on a document from the North Carolina Board of Professional Licensed Counselors and Mental Health Counselors that said your children were psychologically abused for the last year and a half. That's what I got from him. This person had 3 ethics violations and absolutely abused your kids.
Mhm.
Here, I need to write a report. No. All of them said no. And unfortunately, I was broken in such a way where I didn't know what to do at that point. I mean,
Mhm.
we all go through these brick walls. How is this the entire government situation? Why are they denying me the right just to file child abuse charges?
Hmm.
It's all about the money. They make so much money.
And it's because when these kids are going through this child psychological abuse, they are being turned into another personality disorder.
Yes.
So people say, oh, the system's broken. No, it's working the way they wanted to, because that way they can churn out more kids with personality disorders that will grow up, go to college, get married, and then within, 5 years into that marriage, have this personality disorder blossom and create havoc in someone else's life who may not be a personality disorder, who may come from a good family and a nice person, and their lives are turned upside down by false allegations and lies. Because
Absolutely.
that's what they do first.
But that's not necessarily because a lot of times people like me who grew up with a mother who has, personality disorders, has narcissistic, borderline attachment disorder, who grew up with that on many, many levels. That's what I thought love was.
Mm.
It's in my book.
Right,
I put
right.
a whole chapter into this, is that we think that these narcissistic borderline people are going to marry these unknowing, unwilling people. And unfortunately, they are. I was one of them because what I believed is that, oh, this is what love is supposed to be. Me
Hmm.
doing things for this other person, me trying to make them happy, me trying to do this, over and over and over again until finally we're like, something is really wrong, and we break away. And only if we dive into psychology and say, oh, now I get it.
Hmm.
Now I understand it. Now and that's the only time that we even see this. But by that time, we've already had our carts cut out. Our kids aren't talking with us.
Right. Well, I was watching um, a talk show episode, and they had Ilyana Van Zanten on. And she had said that, okay, you grew up with crazy. So you're used to growing up with crazy and how to be being treated that way.
Hmm.
So when you come out of that and realize how you were raised, you want to change, you want to break that cycle.
Totally.
So when you see crazy come down the street, you turn around, cross the street, and go the other way. And that was a turning point when I knew I needed a divorce. But she was absolutely right because when you're raised with this, this is what you are. You don't know any other, you don't know anything different. This is
Well,
what you're trying.
that's what you fell in love with. Oh, if I was doing this and getting my mom water and rubbing her back and this, that, the other, and helping, got to have her feet and, you're whining all the time. That's what you grew up with. So if you fall into somebody else that wants you to this and that and this and that, that's what you're used to. That's what love is. And so you have to break that cycle, like that person is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't break that cycle, you're going to jump out of the fire and right into another fire.
Right, right. And Dr. Mark Roseman said that this family court issue is going to ruin 6 generations to come.
At, on the front of my books, I quoted Thomas Jefferson. The tree of liberty. I gotta read this. Ah, I always mess this up. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. That's Thomas Jefferson's quote. Because right now we have racketeering, child trafficking, profiting from this abuse, and they're actually trying to, with Kayden's law, ignore serious pathology in children and child abuse. How in the world can you do this? So yeah, because we're tired of this. The fathers movement is tired of this.
Well, the
And let's
fathers
face it,
movement doesn't even do anything. I've had guys call me with their problems and their court problems, and they said they don't even help them. They don't even answer the phone.
that's horrible. That's horrible.
So, and then the
Because
mothers are saying, well, if the fathers' rights have an organization, how come the mothers don't? Okay, so here's where the big problem is, people, is that parents have got to unite. Parents have to come together and stop it with the gender war. It's got to stop. We have to stand together as parents, or we're not going to get anything done. That's why nothing's been
absolutely,
done, is because
absolutely.
you got the fathers saying, oh, the bravado of the fathers, and you got the mothers going, what the hell are we going to do? We have got to unite. No, apparently nobody wants to because nothing's being done.
That's it. That's it. And that's probably the best thing that we could have said on this entire podcast is that we haven't got together and fixed the shit. If we and fix the stuff, sorry,
Oh, you
edit.
can say that. No, no worries.
And I have been fighting for this the entire time that we need to stop this women that, women this, fathers this. We need to stop. It's all happening to us
Hmm.
and through us, and no one is getting together to basically form a union. I'm really, really lucky that I have 1,000 judges and 1,000 different emails from different people so that I can actually start reaching out and grouping these people together. And so it's
And that's your website, childabusevejudges.com, right?
yes, absolutely. So we have 1,000 judges on there. So if you want to report, oh, by the way, we sent Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, a box so you can actually go online and see it. You can see the box we sent him with 1,000, God, 2,000 pages from 1,000 people who are trying to charge judges with child abuse and still can't get a report written.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And so, but it all went to Kash Patel. I'm waiting for his response. And we're going from there
Hmm.
because it's horrendous, absolutely horrendous that we can have 1,000 judges accused of child abuse and nobody from the Attorney General, Sheriff's Department, police departments, DHHS, the head of the FBI. I've spoke to people in the FBI. This is the second letter that I'm sending out. I sent the other one out to Christopher Wray, which gave me the "we're not doing shit" letter
Hmm.
back.
Hmm.
And this one went out to Kash Patel only 2 weeks ago. So now, I've spoke to Richard Sutherland out of the Hickory office. I've
Hmm.
spoke to I can't remember anybody's name at this point, but I
Hmm.
spoke to somebody out of the Loveland, Amy Howard out of the Loveland office with the FBI. I spoke to their office uh, in Denver. I spoke to the offices in Charlotte. I spoke to the offices in the head of the FBI. I spoke to their children's divisions, and all of them are like, "It sounds like a civil matter. We're not going to do anything criminal."
Oh.
I spoke to uh, Gwynn Lambert, U.S. attorney out of Asheville in North Carolina. He's a U.S. attorney, not an attorney general, but a U.S. attorney. Oh, get me two or three other people who are involved in this, and we'll start something. I got him two or three other people, and he was like, "I'm not going to answer your calls anymore."
Oh.
And I sit there and I'm like, "What? Is this just a dream? Am I in Bizarro world?"
I
And
I
so
this is like a twilight zone because this is what's coming, people. Okay, someday all of us are going to get old, right? Even these people, right? This is going to happen. No, seriously, they're going to end up in nursing homes. Guess who's going to be taking care of you? These personality disorders.
oh my God.
Do you think they're going to have empathy? Do you think they're going to care about you if your diaper hasn't been changed in 6 hours? They'll be like, oh no, I'm off my shift. I don't, it's the other nurse's problem.
Yep, yep.
There's
Well,
not going to
I
be
I
any
won't I
empathy.
won't have to worry about that because I have plans in 10, 15 years to swim from Florida to England.
Oh, it's going to be cold. You're not going to like that.
I don't think I'm going to get much further and I'll be feeding the fish like they've fed me all of my life. I do not plan on being here any longer than I need to. And so you've heard me forgetting names and forgetting stuff. That's happening to me and I realize
Well, it's because of our trauma. we've been so traumatized by the family court system, and we're talking to other parents. As you get phone calls, I get phone calls from other parents, and we're hearing these stories that have so much trauma in them,
Oh yeah,
and
that is true.
it's causing short-term memory loss. It really is.
I always think that, okay, when I'm doing better, when I finally let go, when I can do my own stuff and building my business, then I'm finally able to write another book. I'm able to rise above, and I try and do that.
Hmm.
Excuse me. But the bottom line is I always kind of just feel depressed, and I always when I'm get because you cannot help when you bring up all those emotions of you losing your kids,
Hmm.
when you can't speak to your kids, when another Christmas goes by and you can't speak to them or wish them well, when anything, a birthday, you
Hmm.
just feel like shit, and all you want to do is just say I love you, happy birthday,
Well,
hope you're doing well.
right, the whole family unit, as we were raised to see it, has been completely destroyed.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we don't know how to, the brain doesn't know how to react to that because that's what we were grown up with,
Oh,
the family.
absolutely. Well, and my kids have understand that, men are throwawayable. And like yours, moms are throwawayable.
Hmm.
Okay. Thanks for birthing me. See ya.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
What,
so
what do
some other
you
woman can call you mom,
exactly? Another woman can dance
but
with
she's
you.
not
What
as
the?
pretty. But she's not as
Oh,
pretty,
good.
Ken.
Hey, that's fine. So she can be a troll. She can be a model, but somebody who's going to do that and not take the presence to be like, listen, you know, that is your mom right there. This is her dance. I love you, but I should not be here.
Hmm.
Be a mensch. Be a grown up. That
Yeah.
is your mom. That is your dad. Dance with them.
Hmm.
This is what your time is. Okay. As
Hmm.
long as they didn't beat the living shit out of you or do
Hmm.
anything heinous like that, let them dance.
Hmm.
Let them be in that moment in time. But you can't because that kid is in such a delusion and such a psychopathy that they can't even be like, "Oh, I don't have any emotion." See, what the problem is, or they don't have any empathy. The problem
Ah,
is that when they get to this delusion, when they get to the psychopathy, they don't have empathy
right.
for that person.
There you
They
go.
claim they'll tell everybody, "Oh, I have lots of empathy for this one and that one and this one, but I have no empathy for one of my parents."
Hmm.
What the is wrong with you?
Right.
There, I stopped
Even,
myself.
you know what? I'll tell you what, I'll tell you another psychiatric story when I was a nurse on the psych unit. Oh, I hope I don't cry through this one. But I had a mom that, because I was working on the adult unit, she was
Hmm.
allowed a visitation. Someone was bringing her 8-year-old in to see her. And we came down the elevator, and the kid just loved her mother. She just ran up and hugged her mother. The kid did not care that her mother was mentally ill. And if you heard the conversation that I heard as I sat back and I listened, the mother's talking about, oh, it's going to be Christmas in 2 weeks, and I could play Santa Claus. Would you like that? I can get you presents, and we can do this and that. And I mean, like a lot of crazy talk. I'm sorry, but it's why she's on that psych unit. But that
Yeah,
kid didn't care. She still loved her mother. Okay.
yeah,
So when in court, a mother or father is being called crazy, isn't it odd that this child suddenly immediately hates that parent?
yep,
That's what is so heartbreaking. Here you've got one child was dying to see her mother, got to see her mother, didn't care what that mother was, but your own kids will just throw you away.
well, that's unfortunate, but that's part of the delusion that they're under.
Right, right. And I saw,
Once they're split, they're living in that delusion, and no matter what you say to them, it doesn't make a difference because you're that
mm-mm,
liar, that fear. There's nothing that you can convince that poor child
mhm,
that you are still in love with them, that they are your child, and they have no respect for that parent in their life. And it's sad because you know deep down that they've been abused and you can't help them.
Definitely. And adding on to that, what you just said, I saw a meme that said, stay far away from relatives that hurt your mother or father. They don't like you either. Let that sink in. I'll say it again. Stay far away from relatives that hurt your mother or father. They don't like you either. Okay? Because that's what's coming.
Yeah. That I don't know. It's so sick.
Yeah.
The whole thing is one of the horrible things in this situation is your family
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, okay, I can't get to my children and have them understand. Then the parent that has done this is isolated them, usually from you, but at the same time from your entire family.
Mm-hmm.
And your entire family are the ones that you need at this point to, hey, listen, uh, child one, child two, that's not right. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't right what you're doing. Oh, well, I just need a few weeks off or a year off. No, you want a
Mm-hmm.
year, a few weeks off? Great. Hey, Dad, I want a couple weeks off. Give me a couple weeks and talk to me again.
Uh,
Okay, sounds great. And then you come back. Oh, I need a couple. No, no, no. We need to get together. We need to
mhm.
just sit down. I'm not going to pressure you. I'm not going to do anything. But your family are the ones who should help you out and
Right.
to at least go over to your kids and be like, listen, you can't do this because it's harmful to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need to stand up. They also need to stand up and be able to go to the sheriff's department, the police department, and say, hey, I believe that this child is being psychologically abused. I suspect it. I think you need to do an assessment for this particular psychological abuse, a shared persecutory delusion and a false factitious belief imposed upon another. That's what's going on. And they should, for them not doing that is mind boggling
Mm-hmm.
because you know damn well if your child was being sexually abused, they'd be like, oh, what's the number for the sheriff's department, police department? We're going to call everyone up. You know that they would jump at that.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, when it's psychological abuse, they don't want to do anything.
Well,
Uh,
then, they're going to have a bunch of personality disorders on their hands. And when they end up in the nursing home,
well, yeah, I know.
I'm just
I know.
saying, I'm just saying.
One of the worst things, and I see this with my girls. She's my youngest daughter. She became a social worker. Went to NC State, became a social worker, and described her growth through NC State and that she graduated in 3 years, which is pretty phenomenal. But the fact that she described that she had serious anxiety, serious anxiety, and was hospitalized not once but twice, and yet can't correlate the hatred, the internal hatred for a father, the lack of empathy for a father, the total shut off and emotional cutoff of a father has she can't piece it together. Oh, maybe that's why I have anxiety so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then she went for, excuse me, all these coping skills. I'm going to have coping skills for my anxiety. I'm going to have coping skills for my depression. I'm going to have coping skills for my ability not to have a relationship or do whatever. I'm going to have coping skills.
Mm-hmm.
I have a better idea. Why don't you try and resolve the trauma? Which means, hey, Dad, these are what I think. This is what's going on. Maybe we should try and resolve the trauma so I can resolve the anxiety, resolve the depression,
Mm-hmm.
take away the coping skills. Because one of the worst things that you can do in life is we all have to go through breach and repair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Breach and repair is basically, Mom, Dad, you're a jerk. I'm not going to put my shoes on. You got to get your shoes on because we got to go to school. I'd rather play. You have to educate them. That's a breach. The repair is you have to get your shoes on because you have to go to school. That's just the way it is. This is the law. Da 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 da. Okay, they finally put their shoes on. They're off to school. That is a breach and repair. Okay, a breach and non-repair is the worst thing you could go to a child. I'm not going to school. I'm not, I'm not going to do anything. And then the parent just walks away. The child just walks away and they let that fester. They let that
Hmm.
steep. They let that ruminate and they never ever try to repair that. And the entire child now gets into I hate mom for no reason. I hate dad for no reason. And the parent, has that repair. And if another parent steps in, or if the parent tries to repair that,
Hmm.
and another parent steps in and pushes them away and says, "Oh, you have every right to hate that parent, to fear that parent. You shouldn't have to wear those shoes. You can play those games." That parent is destroying that relationship and is wedged in there so they can't repair that. Refuses to try and repair that trauma. My middle to repair that trauma. Even if I was the worst dad in the world. Well, let's repair the trauma and speak every 6 months.
Hmm.
I still hate you, Dad. No problem, love. Is everything going okay? Yeah, great. Okay, bye. I'd be happy with that. But having an emotional cutoff to a child is so detrimental to those children that there's sorry,
Yeah.
I get very passionate. You could see me because I'm
Well, I
talking
do
about my
too.
kids.
I We just have to start calling out child psychological abuse. And as you and I had talked, I think it was like even a year ago, you even said stop saying parental alienation. Just
Yep.
call it out as child psychological abuse and custodial interference because they both
Yep.
go hand in hand. But somehow in these court settings, they're using the PA.
Yeah, and continue to use emotional domestic violence because
Ooh.
that's what it is. That is the Department of Justice's, and I'll repeat this again, their definition, which emotional domestic violence is harming one's relationship with his or her children. And you can find it on their website, but on the top of their website, it is all about violence against women.
Mm.
Doesn't even say, and I emailed them my question, where's the violence against men?
Hmm.
I was like, you're the Department of Justice. You have violence against women, but you don't have violence against men. Are you saying that men don't have spouses who are destroying their relationship with their children?
Hmm.
How come you're not, that's not in the title, but
Hmm.
yet you have it under emotional abuse. So only destroying a relationship with a woman is recognized by the Department of Justice? No.
Confusing.
They're, it's unfortunate, but it's where you follow the money. These women's groups and all this other stuff get all the money. You won't find a man's group getting any money from any federal government ever.
I had a guest on from North Carolina, and she was saying she would like all of that audited.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, I contacted Sarah Molesky. She is the money person, that looks into all the money coming in from Title IV D&E, and it's $200 million a year just in North Carolina. And I said, okay, where does this money go? And she gave me a breakdown. It goes all into the general fund and it's earmarked for a couple things. 18% of that big $200 million goes to pay for DHHS. 100% paid for by 18% of it. Well, I contacted, oh, what is this guy's name? See, I hate this stuff.
Well,
But I,
it's too early in the morning for this.
no kidding. I had a big jumbo cup of coffee. So I contacted the director of the Judicial Retirement Fund,
Hmm.
where judges get their money for their retirement. And he told me 88% of their retirement is paid for from Title IV D&E funds.
Great.
Okay, that's not 88% of the $200 million. That's 80% of all the judges' retirement fund.
Right.
Okay, so it's a smaller part of that 200 million. The other part of that, the what's his name? Josh Stein, the Attorney General, his entire office is paid for with 100% of that money. Hence, when you call him up and try and talk to his people, hey, we'd like to report child abuse, psychological child abuse. Oh, is this a custody battle? Nothing we can do.
Oh.
It's okay to abuse children, according to Josh Stein, as long as it's psychologically. Because that's custody. Oh, are you allowed to abuse your child sexually during a custody battle? No, no, no. Then why the hell are we allowed to abuse them psychologically?
Th-
I don't click. They hang up
Right.
on you.
Now, people say, well, the judges need more education. I just laugh when I hear that because they know what they're doing.
Oh, they do. They do. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote the books with my name on it. You
Mhm.
know, how's that? I wrote the second book and my first books. I have to be honest with the people who watch this. My first books that were on Amazon are no longer on Amazon. You have to buy the books, or you can go to Marianne's website. What's your website? These are going to be
Oh,
listed.
dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. Or, hey, could they contact you with your email?
Yes, absolutely. My email is gallery, the number one, at gmail.com. You can contact me directly if you want one of the books. I'm happy to sell it for you. You can also, or happy to sell it to you. You can also come to, um,
Mhm.
my books are there, and it really goes into serious how to get rid of this stuff, this parental alienation and psychological child abuse, and bring an attorney in who where the sheriff's department, police department are denying your civil rights and denying state statutes in reporting child abuse. That's
Mhm.
where we all need to be, and we need to force their hand on it.
Can they also contact you on that childabusefjudges.com?
Absolutely. They can send me emails on there and I read through them every couple months to refresh the page.
Okay.
I had one person email me and she was like, "Oh, I saw all the judges. How do I get on the page with the
It's
judges?"
easy. It's
Yeah,
easy.
absolutely. It's 2 clicks. Boom, boom.
Right.
And you can see all the judges in all the states who are accused of child abuse. The
Hmm.
people in Watauga County, Judge Rebecca Eggers Grider, Judge Hal G. Harrison, Judge F. Warren Hughes. These are all absolutely 100% child abusers.
Right.
They
Right.
will emotionally abuse your child and they will try and destroy your relationship with your children.
Mhm.
90% of the relationships they destroy like this will never come back to you for the rest of your life.
Oh, right, right. Even my
So,
judges, I put my judges on your site as well. Judge Robert Sambrook, even though he's deceased, God is dealing with him. But I also put Judge Shad Connolly, who, when he was on the bench for maybe 10 minutes, no due process. I got no due process as a pro se litigant. That's abuse of a pro se litigant. And he just got up and left. He said, "We're just going to keep things the way they are." And as he walked off the bench, I yelled at him, "Your Honor, my children are being neglected." And then I had an 80-year-old bailiff. Like, how old are these people in this courthouse, right? This 80-year-old bailiff. Can you imagine working in your 80s wearing that uniform? He comes up, "Ma'am, I'm going to put you in jail if you keep talking like this." I said, "Not my first rodeo. I'm out of here." And I had another lawyer come up behind me wanting to put all his stuff out, so I split.
you know what you know what the worst thing in this whole thing is? At any point, a judge can be like, "Okay, I am going to order an assessment." The assessment is derived from Craig Childress. He has an assessment on this form of emotional or psychological child abuse. He has an assessment that is 2 pages long.
Hmm.
13 questions. Check, 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 check. Whether they have like 3 or 4 checks, I forget what it is. But okay, this person is being abused psychologically or is not. That's it. Okay. Also has assessments for parenting skills from a
Hmm.
parent. So one assessment for the child, an assessment for each of the parents, and you may have to go through another assessment for the parents to see if they're fit. That's it.
Right.
So all a judge needs to say, you know what, let's do these assessments. It'll take somebody a day and a half.
That is great you said that. That's great you said that. But wait a minute, judges like to drag out the cases and these
Absolutely.
attorneys
That,
like
but
to run
see,
out continuances.
but here's where you need to have an attorney or yourself, if you're pro, say, Your Honor, I believe my child is being abused. I suspect they're being abused by this statute here in our state. By the way, I have a page on childabusivejudges.com that is states and letters.
Mm.
Click on that. The states have a listing from Alaska all the way down to, all the states, all 50 of them, with the codes of mandatory reporting of child abuse.
Hmm.
Every state. So you can actually say, I believe my child is being abused psychologically. I would like them to be assessed with this assessment and be diagnosed. I would also like myself and my partner to be assessed for our parenting skills.
Hmm.
This way, it'll take it right off your plate. I can say, You're right, Your Honor, I was wrong, or You're right, I was right. Now let's
Hmm.
go ahead and do the next thing. And you can do that within a week to 2 weeks. Done.
Yeah, simple.
But they won't do it. They refuse to do it because they don't want to relinquish the power and the money coming in. And if your child is being abused and you're in court and you say, Listen, I believe my child is being abused. And that judge says, Well, I want to think on it. No, Your Honor, you've taken away my parenting rights
Hmm.
based on hearsay. I believe
Hmm.
my child is being abused. You're not going to think on this because there's nothing for you to think on. I believe my child is being abused. Excuse me, bailiff, sheriff, deputy. I would like to file now child abuse charges against that judge because he's refusing to do an assessment for child abuse, psychological child abuse. And I would also like to file emotional domestic violence based on the Department of Judges definition.
But
I
would
would
they
like
even take
those
that
criminal charges.
seriously? If a parent did that, they're not gonna, I mean, at least the bailiffs I was they would not deal with that. They'd be like, just go home.
No, 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 no. The reason you say that in court is so you can have a copy of that. You get a copy of the recording and you give that to an attorney to go ahead and motion to file child abuse charges
I'll get it on
against.
the record. You're saying get
Get
it
it
on the
on, you
record.
want to get it on the record. And that's why
Okay.
I wrote these letters. You can actually hand them a letter that states this. Your
Excellent.
Honor, here's a letter for you. Here's a letter for you. It's less than one page. I please read this and let's do an assessment of my child. All he has to say is, yes, let's make that happen, gives it to the Child Protection Agency or DHHS, and they look at it and say, okay, we are not certified to give this assessment. We have to get a specialist in here to do this 1 hour assessment. Done. Let's go and do the, and they can do it via video, do it whatever. They can record it and give it to anybody else who wants the copy of this.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Done.
something. Yeah,
Done.
exactly.
But they want to hold all their cards. So that's the difficult position is that we as parents, you have to understand, you have to be steadfast
Hmm.
and you have to be non-relenting. And you
Hmm.
have to say, these are the statutes. I want this to be taken care of now. You have to bring it to court. You have to go after them just because they are refusing it, refusing to file these. Because what they're doing is they're protecting that judge for that next time when they do the same thing to another kid. So they can do it to another kid, so they can do it to another kid and look, oh, we never had to write a report. See, that judge is wonderful. I have gotten 20 calls just from Watauga County of these judges abusing other kids from other parents, other families, other grandparents. These people are serial child abusers and
Mhm.
child traffickers. You know, and that comes back to what you said. We all need to get together because
Mhm.
I don't want to get this.
Well, everyone's going by a false narrative and has to fit into their pretty picture of, you know.
Yep. Oh, by the way, you had said something earlier about this person, this child who winds up with this pathology that's growing up and is going to marry somebody and bring this pathology another generation, a cross generational coalition. So you'd said that, but there's also a major change and switch. Okay. Whereas the American Psychological Association used to be 50 years ago, 85% men, 15% women. Now you have 85% women, 15% men, and men don't want to join. They don't want to have anything to do with the American Psychological Association because anytime they say, "Oh, this is kind of chauvinistic against men," or you need to make this equal, that man will get drummed out of psychology, will get drummed out of the APA quicker than he could say anything else. Because what you wind up having are a lot of angry women that join into this group. And I don't mean to stereotype, but that's what has happened in this.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, God forbid, you should be like, oh, well, men are getting abused here in this way. Oh, you're going to be drummed out.
Mhm.
Because a lot of those women who are in that organization have gone through some type of abuse. So you say you have 20% that have been sexually abused or physically abused.
Mhm.
They hate men. They hate the man or the abuser who did it. Then you have 20 to 30% who are psychologically abused. Many of them, 80, 75%, hate the men that did this and hate uh and hate the women who did this. And
Mhm.
so what happens is they will grow up and they will hate all the nuances that either a man or a woman has. So a lot of those they wind up being um, they wind up being in that woke generation
Uh-huh.
that hate men or hate women or hate whatever. And so it destroys them as a fabric. So when you're saying they're going to get married and do it to somebody else, a lot of them that wind up hating their fathers see all the nuances of their father in every one of the males. And they're like, I'm on the wrong team.
Mhm.
I need to switch because I'm not happy with any of these men who remind me of my father.
Mhm.
And so it's what happens is you wind up with this huge woke movement that's involved in the American Psychological Association, that's involved in the American Psychiatric Association, that's involved in politics, that hate men, that hate the stuff that's going on. That's why there's this patriarchy, oh, the toxic masculinity, all this stuff
Mhm.
came out of destroying relationships in family court because they will see the nuances in everything.
Mhm.
And that is horribly sad. And I'm not saying obviously that it's just men, just women, whatever, but because it was such a large portion for the last 30, 40 years,
Mhm.
it was over proportional with men until it came down to all the women. And that started coming down to all the women in the, I want to say late 2000s,
Mhm.
2008, 2009. Oh, what do you mean we can destroy a woman the same way? Oh,
Mhm.
yes, let's go ahead. And you
Mhm.
have these sick, dark triad people that will
Mhm.
do that.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah,
so glad you came
I'm
on.
sorry. It's just I wrote these chapters so people understand what's going on.
Mhm.
And one of the things in my book, Stopping Parental Alienation in Its Tracks, is what we need to look at, is how you need to react with any kind of court system. Because what the courts will do, what the bailiffs will do, what the deputies, the sheriffs, well, is this parental alienation? No, This is
Mm.
child abuse, child psychological abuse. Here is the things that they are. Here is the DSM notes. Here is the numbers. This is what we're looking for. Oh, did you say it was during a custody battle? No, you're not allowed to beat the hell out of your kid. If it's a custody battle, that's child abuse. Why the hell are you keep telling me that I'm not going to write a report on child abuse?
Hmm.
Because it's a custody battle. That's retarded. You don't do that.
Right.
So I will hold these people to the fire
Hmm.
because they are encouraging the destruction of the family unit and your children forever, for life.
Hmm.
Um, the whole thing is such a conundrum where we, as you know, ab- parents of abused children, can't get a report written on the child abuse. We cannot, as domestically abused, we cannot get a report written on the domestic violence of them destroying our relationship with our kids.
Hmm.
This is horrific for any parent to ever have to deal with. That's why you see so many people. I mean, when I wrote my books, there are the unalived and the stop parenting in its tracks, stop parentalization in its tracks. There was one person who unalived themselves. It drives me insane. It's what angers me to no extent. This is not, unaliving themselves.
Hmm.
This is targeted, manipulative, forcing people because they can no longer bear with their children being so hostile with no empathy. It's totally against everything they ever learned. It's so painful for a parent. They just want to escape the
Hmm.
pain because nobody wants to live with a child who you raised to love and appreciate life in itself. Nobody wants to see that child be so torn apart and so painful that it's
Hmm.
so painful for them not to be able to actually have a report written and have them assessed. That is it's unfathomable with so many people.
I'm
On
so
that note,
yeah, I'm so glad you came on, and I'd like to have you back on again. So, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast. Help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Kenneth Gottfried, for all your knowledge on this. Thank you
thank
so
you,
very much.
Marianne. I love you.
Oh,
Have a
I love
great
you
day.
more. Bye.
Bye.